Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we're up to chapter 4. When the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, the Yidden were in Mitzrayim and they were slaves. There was nothing free about about being slaves in Egypt. But yet when they're in the desert, they complained to Moshe and they said, "Oh, when we were in Egypt, we ate fish for free." So what does it mean they ate fish for free? There was nothing free. They said, "Oh, it was free. We were free from mitzvahs." They didn't have the obligation of doing mitzvahs, the responsibility of doing mitzvahs. There was no welcome. Um, so up until now, everything that we learned was very spiritual and very holy and very nice. But now in this parak, this is where it's going to start demanding from us the change. It's not just that we want to hear spiritual stuff and be very inspired, but we don't want to change. We don't want to, that shouldn't cost us anything. We shouldn't have to do anything about it. Just, it's so wonderful. But now this is where, we're not just here for a free ride, but rather we're here to actually work, to actually make, to change, because it's very wonderful to learn new information, but it's meaningless if we don't do anything about it. Okay, so also I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to review where we are how we got to where we are now. And I always like to hear new stuff. Just tell me new stuff. I want new inspiration, things I didn't hear before. But there's a lot of value of keep going back from the beginning, and every time you go back, there's something new that's like a screw that's tightened. That okay, and it may that clarity every single time. There's something new that becomes clear that it's worth going back to the beginning just to figure out where how we got here and to refresh our memory. Okay, so a very Jewish thing is that to make commitments before we know what we're getting ourselves into. And that's how we are. And just from Mount Sinai, Nasa v'nishma. And this is what the soul does. Before the soul comes down to this earth, it makes a commitment. It's going to be a tzaddik and it's not going to be a rasha. And even if the whole world tells you that you're a tzaddik, you should still view yourself as a rasha. And the soul has absolutely no idea what that means. And yet, Nasa v'nishma, we take that oath before we even come down here. So that's how Tanya starts. So we have a bunch of questions. Jewish people, how do you know you're sitting amongst Jewish people? That's already a question. It's because we ask questions. We ask questions about everything. So question number 1, how does the soul make this promise before it even knows what it's getting itself into? Next question, why should I live my entire life thinking that I'm a rasha? If the whole world tells me I'm a tzaddik, I should view myself as a rasha. How am I able to serve Hashem with the joy if I'm walking around feeling so sad that I'm a rasha? And then we want to know, what is a tzaddik? What is a benini? What is a rasha? The conclusion that we come to is that a rasha is any person who does something against Hashem, does something against what Hashem wants for any amount of time. So if I've said this example in the past, this is from Rabbi Shais Taub. It's funny. My husband's actually going to Montreal this Motzei Shabbos for bar mitzvahs, but he uses the example traveling to Montreal, and you're going with someone, and they tell you, I get into a car accident about once a year or once a month. So, I'm very tired. I'm going to Montreal. Do you want to come with me? No, thank you. Even once a month, it's only once a month. It's only once a year. No, I'd rather not. So the same thing is with serving Hashem. The question is, do I have perfect control or do I not? Even if it's only one time, once a month, that I'm losing control, that I'm not fully in control. So the ideal thing, what we're trying to achieve and what a benini is someone who has perfect control. So if I'm only gonna sin just for 2 minutes, so that then those 2 minutes you lost control, and then already the person's in the category of a Rasha, and then they have to get back to the category of a Beinoni. Okay, next question we ask. Welcome. Woo. Okay, so the next question that we're asking is, what are we actually made of?
Yeah.
Are we bodies powered by souls? Or are we souls that are temporarily in bodies? Neither is true. We are two souls, each of us is two souls fighting for control over the body. Now, the first soul could lead to bad behavior. Why? Because it's an impulsive soul. So when we're feeling angry, lazy, arrogant, all that is coming from the impulse is an impulse which is coming from the animal soul. So we have an impulsive side, but we are a godly soul. Now, just like our DNA that we get from our parents is very, very tiny, but that's the essence of who we are. The same is with our neshama. It might be very tiny. It might be just a spark of actual piece of Hashem, but that is who we are. And no matter what we do, just like no matter how far away we run, no matter how much we scream, no matter how much we rebel, no matter how much we misbehave, we can't run away from our essence, from our DNA. You can't run away from who you are. As wherever you go, you're going to find yourself there. So this is the neshama part, the godly soul. This is actually who we are. So it might be small, it might be tiny, but yeah, it's our essence. Okay. And now, last parak, we asked, how does the soul operate? We said we don't have to just come to a class in order to come to an inspiring class in order for the soul to start working, but rather the soul is divided. Each of the souls has 10 powers, which is because we're created in the image of Hashem. He has 10 spheres. Again, we discussed that Hashem's spheres are not his essence, but it's his image. And we have these 10 powers, which are divided into 3 intellectual powers and 7 emotional powers. The intellectual powers, that's what makes us think, innovate, and create. And then the emotional powers are a response to the intellectual realization. So nothing happens, and we can't care about something unless we understand it intellectually. So the more we think about something, the more we'll come to either love it and want to come close to it, or to be afraid of it and to want to run away. If a person becomes aware that something is meaningful and something is valuable, then he wants to come close to it. If a person becomes aware that this thing is dangerous, then they want to run away from it. So first is their awareness. And then once we have the awareness and we know about it, then we can actually, then comes the feelings and the action. And the same is with Hashem. The more we think about it and the more we know about it, the more we're able to actually feel a real connection. So we said, Chachma is that flash of an idea. But then we get immediately distracted as soon as the phone beeps up, WhatsApp, and I immediately forget what that Chachma was. Bina is research, and Das, that's how we ended off the class last time. Das is an intellectual ability to take something that's abstract and make it your own. It's no longer something that I could just lecture about, but it's how I live my life. That's Das. And Das is a journey. Das takes our whole life to actually get Das. And it's not something that's a snap of a finger. The whole Tanya is going to basically teach us how to have true Das. Okay, so all that was just a review. Now everything from here is going to be new. Okay, so now I have this amazing neshama, this powerful neshama inside of me. And then there's a world. What's the bridge? What's the interface? What's the point of connection between my neshama and the world. Someone to guess? Okay. Okay, excellent. So, and how do I do my Torah mitzvah? How do I learn Torah and do mitzvahs? What do I need? What do I need?
Body.
I need my body, and and the term the metaphor that we're going to use is we need clothing. Clothing.
That's the connection.
So in order for my soul to be able to, my soul is energy. It's not a physical, tangible thing. Imagine like an invisible man. It's invisible. An invisible man cannot interact with this world. So what we have to do is we have to put on clothing, and through the clothing, through these garments, the neshama is going to be able to express itself. And the clothing may seem insignificant and secondary, but yet at the same time, they could actually uplift the person to a level that's so much higher. For example, you go to a wedding. When you put on the makeup and you put on a beautiful gown, you're more than what you usually are on a regular day. You could also, be in your pajamas and your fluffy slippers, and then it's less than your image to the world. So clothing is a big deal, and the neshama also needs clothing in order for it to interact and to express itself and to get something done. It can't. A ball of energy can't do anything. It could do anything. It could do something only if it's in a body and if it has clothing. Okay, so I'm sitting in a traffic jam and I'm nervous and late for an appointment, late for a meeting, whatever it is. And that's welcome. So yeah, just take off the coat. Okay. So I'm frustrated, but then I have to, but my neshama also has an opinion. My neshama also, maybe my neshama has a bird's eye view of the situation. And how is my neshama going to able to have a say when I'm so frustrated or overwhelmed? How do I touch someone else with my neshama? And how do I get in touch with my neshama? So the neshama is the most spiritual, incredible thing. It's an actual piece of God. And how can I get in touch with it? How can I use it so that when I'm frustrated or in a traffic jam or whatever it is, I could be able to see something bigger than that. And everything that we spoke about before, Chachma Bina Das, is all great and wonderful to learn Torah and to understand about Hashem. But though the Chachma Bina Das could also be used if I want to, if I have a test to study for. It's not just being used for the knowledge of Hashem. So when my Chachma Bina Das is used to learn Torah, then it becomes a garment. It becomes clothing for my neshama to express itself. Okay. So there's something very interesting, and that is I want to engage with my soul. My soul is the most spiritual thing in the world. And the way I'm going to engage with my soul is through something that seems very superficial. And we see this in Yiddishkeit in many different cases. What's going to stimulate the highest thing through something very primal and seemingly primitive. For example, when Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur comes along, right? So what do we do on the whole month of Elul before? We blow the shofar. What's a shofar? You don't see a shofar in Carnegie Hall. Is shofar a musical instrument? Hard to say that it's a musical instrument. That cry of the shofar is a very basic, primal sound. And here, the Russian Yom Kippur. This is it. This is when I want to have all my spiritual ducks in order. And what are we doing? What's the big deal of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? What am I going to use to stimulate my soul, to wake up my soul? A horn of a dead animal. Something so primitive. Something so primitive is what I'm going to use in order to wake up my neshama. So we see this is the case. The highest thing is very much connected to the lowest thing. And that's why if you have a bunch of people, you could give a very sophisticated lecture and everyone's going to fall asleep. You could say, look, I'm sharing such incredible stuff, the highest of the high, yet everyone's sleeping. And if someone is sleeping or unconscious, you're not going to start meditating with them until Hatzalah comes. What are you going to do? You're going to shake them. You're going to scream. You're going to wake them up. So we have the most basic behavior connected to the highest levels, and vice versa. So if I want to get in touch with my neshama, what do I need? I need something as primitive, as basic as clothing, and we're going to discuss what the clothing is. So it seems insignificant. The kids, teacher trying to teach the kids about tznius. What's the difference? What I wear? What's the difference? It's not who I am. And why are you judging me by my clothing? It's so insignificant. You're not looking at the real me. And it's true. But on the other hand, clothing is very, very important, and it is very, very telling. And 1 inch below the knee and 1 inch above the knee makes a big statement. So yes, it's very superficial, but at the same time, it's connected to it is very much connected to something very, very deep. Okay. Do you need clothing? You would say yes. Okay, so but I'm going to ask you, who's you? Who's you? So if you want to say the human body, then yes, the human body needs clothing. Why does the human body need clothing?
The garden, he said, we used to not have clothing.
So how is a human different than an animal with regards to clothing?
Shame.
Okay, now think about the winter. What's the difference between a human and an animal with regards to clothing? What does an animal have that we don't have?
Built-in clothing.
They have built-in clothing. They have fur to keep them warm. So the first thing that we need clothing for, just very basic, is to protect us from the cold, to protect us from the heat, to protect us from dangerous things. Imagine, walking barefoot, that we could get hurt. So we shouldn't get hurt, and we should be warm in the winter and cool in the summer. So we need clothing is very important for our protection. And also another thing about clothing is that it creates an appropriate interface between the person and society. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, first of all, I have to look up what interface means. Okay, interface is the point where two systems, two subjects, two organizations meet and interact. So two people are meeting or interacting. So the interface is the point where the two people meet, and the clothing helps us present ourselves when we're meeting another person. And it says a lot about us.
That's such an interesting concept. Yeah,
Developable. No,
yeah,
say.
well, yeah.
Okay, there you go. Clothing. Okay, so first of all, what clothing we wear? What does clothing do for us? If a person is wearing a uniform, It could be a police uniform, it could be a school uniform, it could be a nurse uniform, a doctor uniform. When a person puts on a uniform, it makes them feel a certain way and makes them act in a certain way because of their clothing. And when we go to a formal event, when we go to a wedding, that's one kind of clothing. And if you go to a pool party, that's another kind of clothing. And if you come to a pool party in a wedding gown, that's a problem. So the clothing has to fit who you're meeting with, the season, the circumstances, the people. And so clothing is extremely important and extremely telling. So the clothing is a connection not just between me and the world at large, but it's between me and how I interact with whoever's, and the way I interact with whoever it is that I'm interacting with at this particular point in time. So on the one hand, the clothing is two opposites. On the one hand, it's superficial, it's disposable. I could take off something and put something else on in a matter of a couple of seconds, and it's not really who I am. And I could rent a $2,000 dress and give it back tomorrow. So it's not really who I am. On the other hand, clothing makes the person.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Wait, Does it have to do with time and space?
Yes, has to do with everything.
No, that's not my question. Does it have to do with time and space regarding what kind of appropriate outfit you're wearing at that time? And that connects back to the neshama? Is that all connected?
It's all connected, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. When you see a person dressed in an eccentric way, then right away you judge them and say, oh, this person must be or might be strange. And even when someone's going on a date, when they dress well, it gives them the confidence. Or a teacher dresses well, that's the first thing the kids, in 1 second they decide if the teacher is a good teacher or not a good teacher based on what she's wearing, and they keep tabs. How many times did she wear this thing? Whatever. Yeah, but it gives us courage and it gives us confidence. So it's not the soul. It's used by the soul. It's replaceable, but it's very critical. It plays a critical role at the same time. And when we know, okay, so what are the three garments? Thought, speech, and action. Those are garments. And when we know how to use them, we're going to know how to maximize the soul's experience. Okay. Perek Dalid starts with the letter Vav. Vav is and. So in grammar, in grammar, you can't, the teachers will get really upset if you start a sentence with and, especially if you're starting a new chapter with and. But the Alter Rebbe, everything that he wrote was very, very exact. And not only is the letters Vav, and it starts V'oid, and more. So on one hand, it's Vi, it's a Vav, it's connecting to the previous Perek, where we spoke about the three intellectual powers. So it's very much connected. It's not the clothing is very much connected to the intellectual powers. On the other hand, it is oid, it's an accessory, it's an addition, it's secondary. Okay. So relatively speaking, the 10 powers are the core and the clothing is the accessory. But again, the accessory, the clothing is the lower, but yet it's very much connected to the highest of the high. And we know that also the greater the Talmud Chacham, the more they could come down to speak to a young child. The greater you are, the lower you could come down. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the first one. The first one is machshava, thought. So we have to make a distinction between intellect and thought. thought is always running. You're constantly thinking. And even when you go to sleep, you're still thinking, and that becomes our dreams. It's constant. Intellect is a choice. Thoughts do not have to be intelligent. It's just thoughts. Intellect is a faculty of the soul. It's a soul power. And thought, okay, so intellect is the soul power, which is like the core. And thought is the garment, the clothing, which processes the intellect. You also process emotions in your thought. So the thought is the garment, while the intellect is the power. And thought is called levush hapnimi. It's actually like the undergarment. It's the deepest of the levushim, and it's closest to us. It could also be compared to skin. We have clothing, we wear clothing, but we don't have clothing on our face. Our skin is the clothing for our face. Imagine if someone knocked on the door and you opened the door and they didn't have skin. That would be very horrible, right? So the skin is part of you. It's constant. You can't. It's very much one with you. But it's also a protection. It's a layer of protection. It's protecting you from everything else. And actually, the skin also just like clothing you could shed, skin also sheds. So the thoughts are personal, they're intimate, it's part of me. Just like the skin is always on me at all times. While the other two, which are speech and action, I could go days without using it. I don't recommend it, but a person could go for a few days without talking or just laying in bed without doing much. So while versus thought, which is constantly running. Just like there are certain seasons that I don't have to wear every single type of clothing in every single season. In the summer, I don't have to wear a winter coat and a hat. So action and speech isn't constant, while thought is. And action is so much more external than thought that it could be completely unintentional. I could kick a pebble with my foot and it could land in someone's window and shatter the window, and it was completely unintentional. I wasn't thinking about it. It just happened. Okay, so we're saying is that within garments, there are all different levels. And within clothing, there are all different levels. I could have the clothing that I wear to work, and then I could have a clothing that I wear to a wedding, and then I could have something that I just do very occasionally, my Purim costume. So there's a lot of different layers when we're talking about garments. So when I think or I speak or I act with that, or my action or my thought and my speech has something to do with Yiddishkeit, that I am creating a garment for my soul to express itself. So we should never underestimate the power of what the garment does for us. So if the soul has 10 powers, 10 faculties, the soul also has like 613 limbs for the 613 mitzvahs. And when we do a mitzvah, we are actually giving clothing to that part of the soul, to that dimension of the soul. Okay, when it comes to thoughts, when it comes to learning Torah, we're going to speak about this next time. There's different levels that where we could learn Torah. There's Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Said, which we're going to speak about next time. And when it comes to learning Torah, no two people the expectation is not the same for any two people. Everyone is different. It depends on the source of your soul on high, where your soul comes from. Different souls come from different places, and that's why they're attracted to different parts of Torah. And also it depends on your intellectual capacity, how much you're able to understand. So no two people are the same when it comes to learning Torah. It says that Hillel, there's Hillel and there's Shammai. All of Hillel's students, the root of their neshama came from Chesed, and all the students of Shammai, the root of their neshama came from Gvura. So when it comes to learning, it very much depends on, welcome, the root of where your soul comes from. So if there's a certain part of Torah that resonates with you, that is a reflection of where your neshama is coming from. Okay, so that's basically, in a nutshell, just part one of many, many parts of Perek Dal Tanya from Rabbi Shishler. And now we're going to talk a little bit from Rabbi Sheistab, which is a little bit more easier. Okay. So the way he explains it is that these things, thought, speech, and action, are a choice. You behave in a certain way, and you have a choice of how you're going to behave. And even where it's hardest to understand it is with thought. But I could think, there's a difference between thinking of something and thinking about something. If a person has a sign, it says, don't even think of parking here. Shoot, I just thought about it. I just thought of it. Just the fact that the sign was there, don't even think of parking here. Well, I just thought of it. I mean, you shouldn't have put the sign if you didn't want me to think of it. But now that the sign is, now that it says, don't even think of parking here, I have a choice. I could think about parking here. I could sit here for 5 minutes and think about how wonderful it would be. Imagine if the sign is in Borough Park, right? How wonderful it would be if this was a legal parking space. Then how much shopping would I be able to do? How convenient would it be if I was able to park in here? So it's think of and think about. So a thought could come into my mind. Now it's a choice if I want to think about it. For example, if you, here we have a lot of adult communities, 55 and up, you buy yourself a home in one of these adult communities, and they have a public swimming pool that you could go to for free. It's part of the amenities of this adult community. And you come to the pool, and the pool is filthy dirty. There's bugs in it, there's leaves in it, there's dirt in it. It's disgusting. Now, you have a right to sit in this pool. But now the question is, do I choose? Do I choose to sit in this pool, or am I going to find another place that's clean and pay membership maybe if I have to, and go to a normal clean swimming pool? So sometimes in life, something happens, and something happens, big or small, and I feel that I have the right to be miserable. And I have the right to sit in this filthy swimming pool because, this is my right. But the question is, how long are you going to sit in the dirty swimming pool? So maybe and sitting in the dirty swimming pool is an analogy for sitting with a negative thought. So someone did something wrong. Someone said something nasty, and I have a right. I feel like I have a right to be upset, and I'm going to wallow in the pain and the suffering of this, this rebuke or this, mean thing that someone said to me. I have a choice that I could sit in it, or I could say no. I'm not going to think about it. I could think of it. It just popped into my head, but I'm not going to think about it. My 3-year-old says to my husband, says, so-and-so called me stupid. So even a 3-year-old, could think of it or think about it. Or you could dismiss it and say, so what? So what? I don't have to take it. I don't have to accept it. I don't have to, that's a sticky label. I don't have to put it on me. There's a story of a chassid, and he had negative thoughts. So he went to his rabbi, the Maggid of Mizrich, and he said, "What should I do? I have machshav zaros. I have bad thoughts. What should I do?" So the Maggid said, "Travel to this and this town and find this chassid Reb Zev, and he will help you, teach you how to deal with your thoughts." So he comes and he arrives Erev Shabbos to this town, and he's looking, asking for where does Reb Zev live. Finally, he finds where it is. He comes knocking on the door. He hears tons of noise. There's tons of noise in the house. No one opens the door for him. Knocks and knocks, and it's getting very, very close to Shabbos. He realizes that he doesn't have a lot of time. He has no choice. He takes his little suitcase and he goes to the shul where all the beggars are, and he sleeps in the shul Friday night. Shabbos afternoon, Reb Zev comes over to him and says, "Shalom Aleichem, where you from?" So he says, yes, right before Shabbos, I was knocking and knocking and knocking on your door, and you didn't open the door for me. So he of course he invited him to his house. They made Havdalah, and he said, the Maggid Mizrich sent me to find out how I should deal with negative thoughts. So Reb Zev said, "Well, I taught you that lesson as soon as you got here. Just because someone's knocking doesn't mean you have to open the door. So just because someone called you stupid doesn't mean that you have to let it in. You don't have to let it in. So if I tell you, okay, I want everyone to start thinking I want everyone to do times table. Do times table in your head. Doesn't have to be 11 times table. It could be 2 times table, 3 times table. Okay. For 1 minute, everyone start doing multiplication in your head. So you're thinking multiplication. So when I said I want you to do multiplication, no one said doing multiplication. That's a thought. But I know multiplication. I wasn't thinking about it an hour ago, but right now I am thinking about it. So when I'm choosing to think 3 times 3 is 3 times 3 is 9, that's a choice. So even a thought could be turned an action, because an action is something that's not constant. It's something that I choose to think about, and then I could let go of it. Just like clothing, I could choose to think about and let go of it. So if I know something, doesn't mean that I'm thinking about it all the time. As there's a beginning and an end, then it's an action. And there's a choice. If there's a choice what I'm going to think about, and for how long am I going to think about it. Okay. Okay, now, now I'm going to foreshadow, and I'm going to tell you how this is going to become relevant. How is this going to become relevant for us? And the reason is because when we're speaking about a tzaddik, a rasha, and a beinoni, the tzaddik is perfect. The tzaddik never has an impulse for evil. And the rasha is very impulsive. And what's the beinoni? And the question of which we asked in the first parak is, could we be a tzaddik? Could we attain perfection like a tzaddik? And the answer is, our goal is to be a beinoni. And a beinoni might not be perfect in his powers, but could be perfect in his levushim. You could be. So our goal is that in our thought, speech, and action, to have perfection in our thought, speech, and action, that every thought and every time we speak and every action that we do should be aligned with what Hashem wants. That is our goal. Our goal is not that we can't, there are things that we could control and things that we can't control. If a negative thought just pops into my head, no one has a taina. No one's, you can't be blamed for that. You can't be blamed for that because that's just a thought that popped into your head. And a beinoni is someone the tzaddik doesn't have any impulses for bad. But a beinoni does. Every single second he's plagued. He has an impulse to do something wrong, but he could choose. Am I going to think about it? Am I going to say it? Am I going to do it? Or am I going to have self-control? That's, yeah.
You're saying thought, you're not saying the initial thought that a Beinoni has, that he has.
Yes, that's
You're
fine.
saying if it's a choice to delve into it.
Yes, 100%. 100%. It's a behavior. It's the behavior. And even a thought is a behavior because I chose to think about it. And I'll just end with this funny anecdote also from Sheis Taub, to prove to us that we really could have lots and lots of self-control. It's how that's how Hashem created us. We really could be in control. And so Sheis Taub says he was sitting in his car, Chitas, Rambam, whatever it was. His wife was in the store, and he was sitting in the passenger seat in the car. And there's a car next to him. All of a sudden, from the corner of his eye, he sees a woman coming from the store, walking very briskly, holding very tightly on to a young child. And she doesn't look very happy. She takes the child, puts him into the car seat, straps him in, and slams the door shut, sits in the car, and starts yelling at the child. All of a sudden, from the corner of her eye, she sees a rabbi sitting in the car right next to her car, and immediately she stops. Right? Why? Because someone's watching. So in 1 second, we could be in the middle of shouting, and all of a sudden the phone rings, the doorbell rings, someone calls. Immediately, we could control ourselves. So we have that ability to be in control. And somebody think, oh, I really can't. I can't resist a piece of cake. There's no way that I could resist it. But really, we do have the power. Naturally, Hashem gives us the power that we could have self-control. So we're just in the beginning of this paragraph, we're just in the beginning of the journey, but we already understand the power of the clothing. And also it's so incredible because at any time we could think Torah, think about Hashem, speak words of Torah, daven, or do an action, even as taking a penny and putting it in the pushka, and immediately what happens is we are connecting with, we are touching our soul, and we can have a relationship with our neshama the second we do something as basic as making a bracha. That's how we could get in touch with our soul. So if we feel that we're losing control, we have the key. We have the power to get back into control and get the godly soul back in the driver's seat. At any minute, we could get in touch with our soul through the simplest, most basic thing. That's it. When you said those words, your neshama is in control. And you have given a garment for your neshama to express itself, and you have touched your neshama. So it's something that seems so superficial on one hand, yet that's the key. That's the key to become one with, to tap into our core. The most, and it should seem like common sense, but this is a gift that Hashem gave us, the 613 mitzvahs and the Torah, that this is how we could, living in this world, how we could actually get in touch with our neshama. Go ahead. Now it's time for questions.
Okay, what if it was a behavioral impulse? Like, like the kid just kicks out. There's no thought process. It just happened.
So Tanya tries to tell us that there's no such thing, that we're responsible. We're responsible. There's no such thing. Is
it like age limit? Because I'm thinking of a client, so to speak, that's 6 years old that just went through surgery and is acting out of the box. So it's behavior impulse, right? So I'm just asking because I want to understand.
Okay, so sometimes there's a situation where a child is not healthy, and but a regular healthy child and a regular healthy adult, if you know that in your sleep, you toss and turn a lot, and you wave your hands and who knows what when you're sleeping, if there's a glass vase next to your bed, it's your responsibility to move it.
What if you're not moving it? What do you
Something,
say?
if you know,
Yeah,
then you're responsible. If in the middle of the sleep, if in the middle of your sleep,
but if you, in other words, you're saying if you don't know, if you're not logically healthy, that's a whole, that's a different.
yeah, if a
place.
person is not logically,
Do you have an answer for that, though?
if a
Like, what
person,
would be-
if a person is not emotionally healthy, then
Right.
then all these tools of Tanya, this is Torah.
Must be applicable.
It must be applicable, but
what
I'm saying it's not in place of, if a person needs medical help for whatever it is, then it's not in place of getting help that a person needs. But I feel like, and I can't judge because I don't, I don't know that field. I don't know that field, but
I want to hear from, I understand, but I want to understand if Tanya can give me some insight. That's why I was curious.
Tanya
Okay.
tells us that we're a lot more powerful than we think.
Okay.
And even if someone, it's very easy to say, I'm very depressed and and it could be that there's a lot of truth there's clinical depression, and I'm not playing that down. But where did I just read it? There's a book that my husband brought home from the Kinos. It's called Anxiety and Happiness, A Journey. I have to get you the title of it. I just started reading it. It's about a boy, and he was in Israel, and then he really wanted to go to yeshiva in America. I don't know which yeshiva it was, and he applied and he got accepted to this great yeshiva in America, and he was really excited to come. And right before the new school year was going to start, his 17-year-old sister was diagnosed with something, and the family was very afraid, and she needed surgery. And it was him and his brother. And his brother said, I feel I'll daven. I'm going. The brother was going to go to Israel for yeshiva. He says, I'm continuing with my life. I'm going to Israel, and I'll daven by the Kaisel the day of the surgery. And this boy said he felt like if something happened to his sister and he wasn't there, he'd blame himself forever. Different natures. And he said, I'm not leaving my sister, I'm not leaving my family until the surgery is over and I know that my sister's okay. And the surgery was successful, and he comes to yeshiva 3 weeks late. And so already left foot. He was already behind. And then all of a sudden he started experiencing crazy anxiety. He couldn't sleep at night. It was all the trauma of his sister's, of what happened to his sister. And he would wake up in the middle of the night and sweating, and he was anxiety and afraid and who knows what. And he realized that there's something wrong with me. And he went back to his country, wherever he came from, South America somewhere, I don't know. And he went to a doctor. The doctor said, yeah, you have trauma and you have depression, and this is the medicine that you need, and whatever. And gave him a prescription. He walked out of the office with his father. His father said, give me the prescription. Father took this prescription, he smushed it up into a ball, and he threw it. And he said, you're not taking these pills for the rest of your life. And trust me, it was a journey. It was a journey, but a person can say, okay, I am labeled as depressed or anxiety or who knows what, and therefore now I don't do anything anymore. That's it. Just take pills for the rest of my life, and I could excuse all my behavior because this is the label that the psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever gave me. And this guy, his father said, no, I'm not judging. I'm not judging. I'm just sharing a story that was in a book that I have to reread. But he had to take responsibility, and he had to do a lot of inner work. And he has a whole journey, and he writes a whole book, and he says, I'm telling you about anxiety and how to get to happiness, not because because I went through it. He was traumatized, but you have two choices. You could sit back, relax, and take pills every day and say, listen, and maybe some people have to do that. I'm not here to judge anyone, But there's also but it's also, if you have people in your life that believe in you and support you and say, you can do this, you have an neshama, you have infinite power. We could work this through. We could talk about it, we could write about it, we could discuss it. I was so proud of one of my children was going through something, and she said, Ma, I wrote about it. She wrote her dilemma. She wrote what was bothering her and she sent it to me. And I thought that was so healthy and mature, and if you have feelings inside of you, don't bottle it up. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. Write it down. She had, sometimes when you talk to someone, you start talking and then they talk back and you can't even get your thoughts out. She wanted me to read from beginning to end everything that was on her heart. And she wrote it down, and she asked her questions. And I sent back, she's in New York and I'm in Tom's River at midnight. And I wrote back, thank you so much for expressing yourself. And I was so proud of her that she did that. So it's okay, yeah, we have challenges. Every day is a challenge, but if we have the support of friends, of family, of and someone tells we have people that really not just say that they believe in us, but truly believe in us. And we could tap into our neshama. There's tremendous power there. And we can't just say, okay, now I have a diagnosis, so now I'm free from work. That ties into the beginning how we started. It's
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just on the semantics of it, the Gemara says the Hitzad out the Russia, not leaving on me. What?
Okay, okay, so you want the answer? Okay, I'll give you the answer. It's Tihi Tzadik v'al Tihi Rasha. Be a tzaddik and don't be a Rasha. V'afilu kol ha'olam kula em lecha tzaddik ata. And even if the whole world tells you that you're a tzaddik, heyei beinecha, you should view yourself ki Rasha, like a Rasha, not an actual Rasha. Don't view yourself as actual Rasha, but like a Rasha. A Beinoni is like a Rasha because they have the same impulses as a Rasha. So don't be so haughty. Don't feel yourself so haughty because inside you're far from perfect. And someone asked me this question the first class that we had. The question was, Rabbah. How could Rabbah mistake himself? And I wrote this in the chat. I answered it in the chat. I think it was in your house. Rabbah said, "Kigoin ana Beinoni." For example, I'm a Beinoni. And I think you asked the question. You asked, how could Rabbah not know? How could he not know that he was a tzaddik? And what was the answer? The answer is that yes, he really was a tzaddik, but he was afraid. It could be that I don't have the difference between a tzaddik and a Beinoni is that one has an impulse for negative things and one doesn't. He said to himself, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow an impulse will come. He didn't know if he was there yet. He didn't know because maybe I'm just maybe I'm still in the mode of controlling myself. Suppressing it, exactly. But tomorrow, I don't know that it could be tomorrow impulse will come. Therefore, he didn't have the confidence to say about himself that he's the tzaddik. So we have to view ourselves like a Rasha because a Rasha always has impulses for bad, and a Beinoni.
That's the second part. What about the first part? We promised that we'd be a tzaddik. You say a tzaddik.
So when
we're trying to attain.
when we say it's a very, very good question. It's a very good question, and a question I'm going to ask back, which I don't have an answer for yet, is when we say Tihi Tzadik v'al Tihi Rasha, what Tzadik and Rasha are we talking about? Are we talking about the Tzadik and Rasha, how we translate it in Tanya? Or are we talking about Tzadik and Rasha, the borrowed term of it? You see, because this oath is not something that the oath is the introductory to the Tanya, but there's Tzadik, Rasha, and Beinoni, how the Alter Rebbe translates it. How the real tzaddik Rasha Beinoni, the real definition is tzaddik is someone who will never have an impulse for sin. Rasha is someone who has plenty of impulses for sin, and a Benini is someone who has impulses for sin but controls himself all the time, which is what the Tanya translates as the real definition of Tzaddik Rasha and Benini. But then we have the borrowed term of Tzaddik Rasha and Benini, which is when we call our 3-year-old a tzaddik because they wash negavasser, or they let their sister wash negavasser before them. Oh, you're such a tzaddik. Right, so tihi tzaddik alti rasha is practically or very the way we speak tzaddik rasha binini today. You know, and a binini would be someone in the middle. Tihi tzaddik alti rasha, do good things and be good and don't be bad.
I think the oath is really just using the borrowed term.
So could be. I'm guessing. I don't know definitely, but the second part of the oath, maybe that's why we need both parts. Ti tzaddik alti rasha, the way you think tzaddik and rasha is before you come to Tanya, and then afilu kol tzaddik ata, even the whole world tells you that you're a tzaddik, kir rasha, view yourself as a rasha, which is a benini, and over there we're using over there we're using tzaddik rasha and benini, defining it differently. So that's a good question, and the whole Tanya is basically defined. I'm saying we have prakim of Tanya that's discussing chapters 10, 11, and 12. 10, 11, and 12 discuss tzaddik, rasha, and benini. Each benini is more than just one parak, but you have one parak just to talk about what's a tzaddik, one parak just to talk about what's a rasha, and many prakim what a benini is. But that's a very good question. I still have to figure out if that's the answer. I have to ask scholars that are.
I'm both in a tzaddik moment. I mean, we're considered tzaddik in the moment that we control our impulses.
That's also an incredible
Like,
answer.
the promises, like, try it as much as possible to have tzaddik moments.
Okay, it's even a better answer. I like it. That's amazing.
Like,
Tihi tzaddik ba'alti rasha.
Keep making the
try
choice
to
to
keep
be
on
tzaddik.
making
Do
tzaddik
a tzaddik choice. But even if, just to play devil's advocate, even though I like that answer, tihi tzaddik ba'alti rasha, to be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. So to have a tzaddik moment and not to have a rasha.
I think the change, I know the change that impacted me is that it's not that you are all or nothing. It's like in the moment, just because you did something a minute ago that may have been wrong, I could right now make that choice to have control, and that makes me a tzaddik in this moment. So I feel like the practical part.
Yeah.
Because that's a bar, that's the thing what I'm saying, because that's really a bar term.
But
Doesn't
that's
necessarily that you're
common.
tzaddik
No,
or
in the
essence,
moment.
but in the moment.
In the
I'm
moment, I
tzaddik.
had a tzaddik
A
moment.
That's the
tzaddik
borrowed
moment.
term, tzaddik.
Well,
No,
the way
that's
the
in
Tanya
That's what I'm talking about having a top moment, but feel on other things that
Yeah.
have to bring us to it, but later.
Yeah, it's gonna come later.
Tzaddik is something that you're born with.
But we
You
don't have
have
tzaddik.
No,
No,
isn't it?
not with the Tanya.
Yes,
It's a tzaddik is something
Tzaddik is
that you're born
born
with,
with.
that you're born, you don't
Right.
have the impulse.
But a top moment.
Tzaddik moment is I'm acting as if I don't have impulse.
That's
I can't do
Right,
it.
so that's the moment of being a tzaddik.
That's a bane.
That's a bane.
That's a bane, but
Or
a
it's a
top
borrowed.
moment.
Tzaddik moment is possible.
They
We
don't
only
need
have
that.
as many tzaddik
Yeah.
moments as possible. But we know reality is Beyononi also has, unfortunately, whatever, a Russian moment, but that's not, Beyononi means you're not always in that control, but we have as many moments as possible.
But Benoni doesn't have a Russia. It
What?
doesn't have Russia moments according to the Tanya.
Beyononi?
A Benoni always has, it has the impulse, but they're in control of it.
But they
But
have
their inside is like
the
Russia.
impulse, they have the need.
Their
They have
inside.
the,
They are part of-
they don't act, and they don't have Russia moments. A Benoni is, look, Rava was a Benoni, right?
Maybe doesn't have Russian.
They
moments.
conquer
But it doesn't
them,
have-
they also conquer it, they control it.
And Russia can also have tzaddik moments.
Right.
A Russia maybe
no,
that's outside
yeah.
moment, a
A
Benoni.
Russia can have
doesn't
tzaddik
have
moment,
Russia.
but Russia davens is a tzaddik moment.
Right, that makes him
But he's
Beyononi.
defined as a Russian because he has a lot of, he acts sometimes on his impulse.
Right,
But
right,
Bane never acts on his impulse.
Right, even if you act on it, like you said, once a month.
right.
Okay, it's all excellent questions, but I gave.
I think the
Yeah.
impulses are so defined, there's so many, so I'm not gonna go there. Yeah, there's thoughts, there's
No,
behavior.
but that's why they go over here.
It's a silly thought.
I'm
Dwelling on it
recognizing
or
it
the
as
first
such, but
flash of thought. The first flash of thought is not in your control. has that is, thinking about something, even if you dwell in it, is already a Russian moment.
I feel, can I say, like our thoughts, we are not control, we have no control over our thoughts.
We have
a choice.
first, the first not to
That's
go in the door or not, but the
First
moment you
moment.
open that door and you dwell on it, that's part of the emotion.
Her
thoughts
fear
are
is not
forever
allowed
here,
to have that.
abstract,
Like
and
when your
they're
car
in
is
your brain.
coming and that
Right,
fear is
and
not.
And then we have to explain, we have a choice as teenagers.
Part of the emotion is the thoughts, but it's not the reason why it goes away, it's actually, sit
How
up
to
thinking
deal
about
with
something.
that.
Could you
But
explain it?
that person is, sometimes people have different mechanisms, they don't have.
Better than-
Everybody has thoughts, we have crazy thoughts, we have weird thoughts, we have weird, and no one's judging them, even like, yes, it's fast covered. The question is, once you have that thought, what do you do with it? Now you have a choice, you can either let it go to like a strainer, like a macaroni strainer, whoop, it goes out, or somebody gets stuck. The question is, what do you do with that stuck thought?
Then
And that's the work, and some people are.
That takes
tendencies
work,
of-
that takes a lot
Some
of
people
work.
are, have a problem, and they ruminate and they get stuck,
That's-
and then, no, that's
No.
sometimes, I mean, that could be a nerd,
Right, but that's,
and that
that's
would work,
what
like,
work
if
is.
that
That's
work is,
what
what do we
work
do with that thought?
that's exactly what you're saying, that's the work.
Like, some people, it's
Someoone's in
harder
a healthy
to
place.
do with the thoughts.
So that's
And
the
that's based on,
struggle and
and then it's
control.
supposed to be your nurture, and the tools are sometimes, how do I deal with that thought? That
Right,
gets
and that's
stuck.
why they need help, maybe
Right,
some help,
but
but
some
that
help.
is
But
exactly
it's just
where
possible to do
I'm
that, any best way is not with medication, is just to take the thought. Some people need medication as a tool to help them work through that thought. If they can't do it alone, they need some medication, because their nervous system gets all, and they can't do it.
Right, that is.
Thank
Or
you.
their breath work, which is the
Thank
best.
you, thank you.
Natural,
for-
oh, mind,
thank
it's all the
you for-
things, you know.
Thank you, Elisa, I love you.
But that is
Words
kind
are
of like,
like
it's true.
Oh.
But it's called breath work because it takes
But that's
work.
what
It's
you
not a
do,
free
that's-
ride.
But it's true, the best thing is,
Healthy.
I am a believer there's too much medication, I don't, because there's that saying that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice, like, you have a choice, you could choose to stay in your trauma. Now, I'm not saying it's hard, that's it, but
That's
you
a
have to
choice
be
of sitting
different,
in the
you're worried,
pool,
you're not
which I love.
victims of our.
You can choose to sit in that dirty pool,
Or
and you don't get
suffering,
you on,
or
that's
suffering's a
your
choice, you know,
But
is
you're
it
talking
hard,
about, she's
yes,
talking about a 6-year-old.
right.
It's medical, other.
And
and
make sure
background,
to-
there's something to it.
To make choices.
You wanted an adult version? We can go to.
Yes.
Also, I said that's about, it's not
We
that
can-
choice.
we can-
No, but
That's
a
the
6-year-old can't.
People
Yeah.
like stay in the suffering.
Can't let a 6-year-old.
You don't ask questions, right? Okay.
No, we're supposed to ask questions. No, but I will ask this question. I will ask the question to the question I'm gonna ask is ultimately Titai Balti Russia. Is tzaddik in Russia, is that the Tanya's definition of tzaddik in Russia, or is that the borrowed term? That's a clear question.
But I'm thinking, like, no one was born in this world of, like, even Moshe Rabbeinu, like, he was the biggest navi, right? But everybody, you can't be a tzaddik, he's saying, the time he's saying, it's not a pain, it's not even, but then, we're born as tzaddik, there's nothing, no test, but then we have the animal soul, so right away, when we're born, we wanna get our needs met. So we become like a tzaddik Rabbeinu need. It can't be
Thanks,
tzaddik,
Lonnie.
because we have animalistic needs.
So good to see you.
That's how I look at it, right?
So
Tzaddik
ultimately,
has no needs.
our goal on this earth is to be a Beinoni.
Right,
That's
how
what
do
we're
we
trying.
Take our balances, like even the Rambam talks about, we have to be the pull between us, we're right, that's always in the middle, balance, is the perfect, to be balanced. Being pulled from both ends.
We're being pulled from both ends,
And we
but
have to become to a place that balances that we can do right.
I think the balance is the control, to take control, that I can't fix yet, at least in this stage of Tanya, everything that's in I can't fix my insides at the moment, but the beginning of the Avaida, not the complete Avaida, because once we are perfect in thought, speech, and action, then we are supposed to do inner work, like real inner work, to that you see, because what happens is, we're going to speak about it later in Tanya, a rubber band. How much could I pull? How much could I pull?
Right.
So if my inside is, I have impulses for the worst movies and the worst who knows what, but then I'm controlling, I'm white knuckling, I'm controlling. No. But how far could I pull without plotzing? So at some point I have to like, make the gap a little bit less. So I have to pick up my insides and make them at a higher level so that I shouldn't be pulling all day. So that's the next step. But the first step in our Avodah, remember, Tanya is Yechidus V'Alter Rebbe, we're growing in our Avodah. The first thing that we have to work on is thought, speech, and action, to try to be in control. And that's ultimately the Avodah of a Beinoni.
Amazing.
By the way, the tzaddik v'tovah and tzaddik v'rala, could be the promise is that tzaddik v'tovah means Hashem created the person, but there's a tzaddik v'rala. The tzaddik has impulse, he just has it dormant the whole time. meaning that we all have, meaning.
Okay, so I,
That the promise that
And I
we
think
made.
it's a borrowed term, I think that's not a particular.
okay, so I just want to clarify, I want to clarify.
Not.
But I think that term is different from the Tanya started, because at the beginning.
I think it's not.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, because it's a very, very nuanced, but the difference between a tzaddik v'rale and a tzaddik v'tevle is not with regards to impulse.
That's a whole-
Because a
that's a whole
tzaddik does not have impulse for bad, either tzaddik. Also, a tzaddik v'rale does not have an impulse.
He took his animals and converted it to a God. Then he had
Okay,
to-
so there's two, okay, let's see. What's the difference between a tzaddik v'rale and a tzaddik v'tevle? It has nothing to do with impulse. Neither of them ever has an impulse for bad, because the impulse for bad is only the Beinoni. The difference between a tzaddik v'rale and a tzaddik gamor and a tzaddik v'tevle is how much you hate what Hashem hates. If you're completely one with Hashem, then anything that Hashem hates is disgusting to you. That's a tzaddik v'tevle. A tzaddik v'rale is that the things that are disgusting to Hashem are not so disgusting to you. It's the level of how abhorrent is anything that's outside of holiness to
An
you.
example of literally having an animal in a cage, like I remember that example being used.
I know, but I think that we didn't define it 100% then.
That's how it always.
I know,
That's the Tanya
but learning Tanya a second time, the animal locked in the cage is the Beinoni. Because if you
Have it, but you just have it help. The God is also the driver's seat, it's there, it's just locked up. But I think the struggle, they don't even struggle, so if it was locked up, then there's no struggle.
because the reason why we're saying that it's a Beinoni is because ultimately he never wins.
But the
Ultimately,
struggle's there, so the animal in the cage is not an example for Beinoni either.
the animal in the cage is not an example for a Beinoni either.
That was literally the lion sleeping in the cage. We like, remember, that's how we,
We
Oh,
did say
Sunday.
that. We did say that.
at any moment it could wake up. So Beinoni gets woken up, you just won it, or you just controlled it.
So the
I think
Beinoni,
Tzaddik, I don't know, I think, okay, Tzaddik Morale, I think we need to
we need to clarify
explain
that.
that.
Okay, I'm gonna
I
ask,
think
I'm gonna
that-
ask these questions.
clarify.
I'm gonna ask these questions, but I did learn this time around
Yeah.
the definition that which is new to me,
But
which is that a tzaddik doesn't have an impulse for bad.
it's interesting, but you always hear about tzaddikim and you tell their story, and they did. They had strong, very strong self. They did have the Yitzhahara, and isn't it? The higher you get, the stronger your Yitzhahara. There are, I don't know. I always understood it. There are tzaddikim who do have strong struggles or strong desire, but they are totally in
If
control
they
of
don't have
themselves.
impulses, they're here for a free ride.
Right? I think there's. I don't know. I always understood that there were two types.
They have other challenges.
They have to be the leader of all the Jewish people. They have, and
That's a Rebbe or not.
yeah.
You're saying that
So a tzaddik is very, very few.
it
as
is
far
very
as
few
one in
times.
every
There's only
generation.
one.
That's what you said originally.
Also, one more
I
thing.
thought that's a Rebbe.
One more thing, and that is that when we're talking about Beinoni, there's gazillion levels.
Oh, true. I'm okay with.
And it could be that you're a Beinoni that's so close to, and again, because we're so
Right.
mixed up.
That's what I always thought there are.
We're so mixed up between the real definition of tzaddik and the one that's ingrained in us
Right.
Right.
that's very hard to get away from it.
But I still thought there were tzaddikim, when you read biographies of people that maybe they were not the leader of the Rebbe of the generation. But I think that there's only one tzaddik per generation, like the tzaddik equals the
Tzaddik
Rebbe.
Yisod Olam, I think that, the one that's holding up the world is only.
There's only one.
Tzaddik is
Or it could
like
be
that.
very few. It's
I think
very
few, but remember,
few.
They
It
had
has a term
struggles.
lamed with tzaddik.
Right, there's a lot of.
Okay, but Amid Vav compared to the whole world.
Right.
But then
And
read about
it's more than-
36 out of 7 billion
Yeah.
people is pretty
Yes.
far.
there. I mean, it doesn't, whatever.
But if
It's an
someone,
interesting question, doesn't-
someone who's a tzaddik, according to the definition of Tanya, is someone who's so one with Hashem. Think about a Rebbe. Think about a Rebbe. You can't. Avera. It's so abhorrent. That's the word.
That somebody made a mistake, whatever, in davening, and the Rebbe had to repeat Hashem's name at that moment, which he never ever had to do. And somebody who was there with him at that time said his face turned red. It was such agony for him that he may have said Hashem's name in vain the first time, like, which he, according to me and you, it wasn't. But for him, it was so, he was literally like, couldn't handle it. That's a tzaddik.
When you're so one with Hashem that
Yeah.
anything that Hashem doesn't want is disgusting to you.
Yes. Wow. Bye-bye.
So if it's disgusting to you, then you can't have the impulse for it.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
No, I think I learned it both ways, that's why I'm wondering.
Okay, I'm gonna have to
But
clarify.
no, this is very different.
That's why we're here. We're learning it again. We thought,
Interesting.
we thought we knew it.
No,
Surprise.
Hi, Ma.
Yeah,
Oh,
I see she's
Oh,
still on.
okay.
Her screen is black.
yeah.
wow.
So thank you so much for joining us, and we're gonna ask all these wonderful questions to rabbis that are greater than us to help us out. But that's what we're here in class, because that's what I want us to ask, and we have to dig and not be afraid of to ask. And if we don't know, we could say, I don't know. We're gonna find out next time. Okay.
Thank you, Connie. Always amazing. Where does this chair go? Should I-
I'll come back.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks
Thanks
so
for
much.
your